These pretzels are making me thirsty! These pretzels are making me thirsty!
These pretzels are making me thirsty. More, these pretzels are making me thirsty. Kramer.
This is the story of how a pilot that tested as weak, with some of the worst audience scores in NBC history, became a $4 billion cultural phenomenon, and the one executive who canceled a Bob Hope special to give it a second chance. July 5, 1989 brought a sitcom pilot called The Seinfeld Chronicles to NBC, pulling in 15.4 million viewers with a 10.9 Nielsen rating and a second-place finish in its time slot. The numbers weren't terrible, but they weren't the explosive response NBC wanted either. And when the network tested the pilot with 400 households, the results came back catastrophic. The research department's overall rating read weak, while test audiences wrote that no segment of the audience was eager to watch the show again, and none of the supporting characters were particularly liked. One viewer's complaint captured the mood perfectly when they wrote, "You can't get too excited about going to the laundromat." NBC president Brandon Tartikoff, himself a Jewish man from New York, delivered the network's concerns in one devastating phrase that would haunt the show's early days. "Too New York, too Jewish." When NBC rolled out its fall 1989 schedule that May, The Seinfeld Chronicles didn't make the cut. Castle Rock Entertainment took the pilot to Fox, and Fox passed without hesitation. The show looked finished, and that's when something unprecedented happened. One NBC executive who'd never worked on a sitcom believed the show was funny. His name was Rick Ludwin, and he held the title of Vice President of Late Night and Special Programming. What he did next changed television history. November 2, 1988 was the day NBC executives approached Jerry Seinfeld about developing a project, and Seinfeld later confessed on Howard Stern's show that he walked into that meeting without any prepared concept. "Not really," he admitted, when asked if he had an idea ready. "I just always wanted to have a meeting like this. This is really what the goal was." Seinfeld brought in Larry David, a fellow comedian he'd first crossed paths with back in 1976 at Carol Leifer's birthday party, and the two men discovered they shared an identical comic sensibility for observing life's mundane absurdities. A walk through a Korean deli in New York became the moment everything clicked into place. "We started talking about all the different products on the shelves," David told Rolling Stone years later, "and we were making each other laugh." The pitch took shape right there, built around showing how a comedian gets his material. This wasn't a show about nothing, which Seinfeld clarified in a Reddit AMA was just a joke in an episode that came many years later. The real concept focused on the small, ridiculous moments that become comedy, and Larry David established what would become the show's operating philosophy in just 3 words: no hugging, no learning. Multiple working titles came and went, including Stand Up, Good News, Bad News, and The Jerry Seinfeld Show, before they landed on The Seinfeld Chronicles. April 27, 1989 brought the cast and crew to Stage 9 of Renmar Studios in Hollywood, the same soundstage where The Dick Van Dyke Show had been shot decades earlier. Everyone took this as a good omen, which makes what happened next all the more ironic. Jason Alexander described his audition years later as feeling like he was merely doing a Woody Allen impression, while Michael Richards wrapped up his April 18th audition with a handstand that apparently sealed the deal. The character who would become Kramer went by Kessler in the pilot because Larry David worried the real Kenny Kramer would exploit any association with his name, and instead of Elaine, a waitress named Claire, played by Lee Garlington, filled the female role. Brandon Tartikoff watched the pilot screen for NBC executives in Burbank and delivered what became the show's defining early criticism, with that line about it being too New York, too Jewish. The real devastation arrived with the test screenings from 400 households, and those results were worse than anyone expected. Warren Littlefield, NBC's senior vice president at the time, kept the report next to his desk for years and described it this way: "In the history of pilot reports, Seinfeld has got to be one of the worst of all time." The overall evaluation stamped across the top read "weak" in capital letters. What the test audiences wrote was even more damning. No segment of the audience was eager to watch the show again appeared in the findings. Along with none of the supporting characters were particularly liked. George got labeled a wimp and loser friend, while one tester summed up their viewing experience by complaining, "You can't get too excited about going to the laundromat." Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David eventually hung that memo near their toilets, and Seinfeld explained the reasoning to TV Guide. "We thought, if someone goes in to use this bathroom, this is something they should see." Rick Ludwin called the July 5, 1989 premiere date Garbage Dump Theater, which was NBC's way of describing summer burn-off slots reserved for shows they never expected to continue. That 10.9 rating with 15.4 million viewers put them second in their time slot against CBS's Jake and the Fat Man, which looked respectable on paper but didn't qualify as a hit by any network standard. NBC's fall schedule announcement came in May 1989 without the Seinfeld Chronicles anywhere on it. Castle Rock Entertainment shopped the pilot to Fox. Fox turned it down flat, and Castle Rock moved their attention to another pilot called Ann Jillian that had tested better and earned a full season order. That show got canceled after 13 episodes, which nobody saw coming at the time. Rick Ludwin enters the story here as the man who'd commissioned the pilot from his specials budget, an unusual move for someone who'd never worked on a sitcom. When entertainment division executives declined to order the show, Ludwin did something that had never been done before in television. He canceled a planned 2-hour Bob Hope birthday special and took that budget to order 4 additional episodes instead. 4 episodes represented the smallest sitcom pickup in American television history, a number so low it bordered on insulting. Jerry Seinfeld captured the feeling perfectly when he told 60 Minutes, "6 is a slap in the face, 4 is like," and then he just left the sentence hanging there unfinished. Ludwin defended the show to Brandon Tartikoff with words that cut through all the network research. "I'm not from New York, I'm not Jewish, and I thought it was funny." Alan Horn, who ran Castle Rock before becoming Disney's chairman, called Ludwin the unsung hero decades later, and added, "He cheered us from the sidelines, and we never forgot him." Here's where the story gets complicated. Ludwin called the Bob Hope cancellation an urban legend that's not accurate in an interview before he died in 2019. But Warren Littlefield, Alan Horn, and multiple obituaries all confirm the story actually happened. NBC's Preston Beckman apparently joked that Bob still thinks he made that special. NBC's only note after the pilot came down to 3 words: "Put a girl in it." Julia Louis-Dreyfus got cast as Elaine Baines after a brief period working with Larry David at Saturday Night Live, while Rosie O'Donnell, Megan Mullally, and Patricia Heaton all auditioned for the same role. Alan Horn said years later that adding Elaine made all the difference in the world. The show dropped the Seinfeld Chronicles from its title and became simply Seinfeld to avoid confusion with ABC's short-lived The Marshall Chronicles. May 30, 1990 marked the start of its first proper season, nearly a full year after the pilot had aired in that summer graveyard slot. Thursday at 9:30 p.m. following summer reruns of Cheers gave the show adequate performance without setting any records. When the pilot got rebroadcast on July 5, 1990, the rating improved to 13.8, which convinced NBC to order 13 episodes for Season 2. Danger still lurked around every corner, though. Season 2's premiere came on January 23, 1991, delayed 1 week because of the Gulf War, and poor initial ratings pushed NBC to put the show on a 2-month hiatus. Larry David told Seinfeld they had no more stories left to tell and advised him to turn down the Season 2 order, but Seinfeld ignored the advice completely. Nobody in the cast believed the show would survive. Jason Alexander put it bluntly in an interview with Howie Mandel. "No way, no way. I said to Jerry, I think the #1 show in America at the moment is ALF. If that's the #1 show in America, who's going to watch this?" Julia Louis-Dreyfus backed up that pessimism when she confirmed the early struggles. "It struggled for the first 3 years. We were losing to some show called Jake and the Fat Man, and Home Improvement was beating us." Larry David walked away after filming the pilot, thinking that I wouldn't see him again for another couple of years. Ratings weren't the only threat to the show's survival, because creative conflicts kept erupting between Larry David's unconventional storytelling and NBC's traditional sitcom expectations. When David and Seinfeld proposed the Chinese restaurant, an entire episode set in one location where the characters wait for a table and absolutely nothing else happens, Warren Littlefield asked the question that summed up network television thinking: doesn't something have to happen in this show? Rob Reiner, co-founder of Castle Rock, stepped in and confronted Brandon Tartikoff directly in what multiple sources describe as a screaming, crazy thing. Reiner's words to Tartikoff carried weight. "Please, I promise you there'll be stories. "You can't take this show off the air. It's going to be one of the great shows you've ever had." Another version of that conversation has Reiner saying, "Testing schmesting. All in the Family tested in the toilet." Don't get me wrong, Ann Gillian is a nice show, but Seinfeld, now that's a show. Rick Ludwin backed down and told the creators, "If you feel passionate about this, which you obviously do, go do it, and we'll hope for the best." Larry David protected his vision with equal intensity. Castle Rock executives warned him before one Season 3 meeting to keep quiet with a simple request. "Look, just do us a favor, okay? Just don't say anything." When NBC pitched ideas that David found universally terrible, he threatened to quit right there in the parking lot afterward. NBC heard about the threat and immediately backed down, which changed everything. "From that point on, clear sailing," David recalled. "Hardly any notes at all." November 1992 brought the ultimate test with The Contest, an episode about a masturbation competition that never once used the word masturbation. David told The Hollywood Reporter he was ready to pack the whole thing in if NBC refused to air it, but NBC approved it without objection. Julia Louis-Dreyfus remembered thinking, "When we were making this episode, I was convinced we were going to be shut down." February 4, 1993 changed everything when NBC moved the show to Thursday at 9:30 p.m., placing it directly behind Cheers in its final season. NBC announced the move during a special Super Bowl segment on January 31st with all 4 cast members making an appearance, and what happened next shocked everyone involved. 4 weeks was all it took for Seinfeld to jump from 40th place to 5th in Nielsen rankings, a climb that proved the show just needed the right time slot and lead-in to find its audience. Cheers ended in May 1993, and Seinfeld inherited the 9 p.m. Thursday anchor position that made it the cornerstone of NBC's must-see TV brand. Season 4's episode, The Pilot, pulled in 32.8 million viewers, while the show hit number 1 in both seasons 6 and 9. Jerry Seinfeld's salary tracked the show's transformation perfectly, starting at $20,000 per episode in Season 1 and reaching $1 million per episode by Season 9. The show generated an estimated $200 million annually in gross revenue for NBC at its peak, numbers that justified every risk NBC had taken to keep it alive. 76.3 million viewers tuned in for the series finale on May 14, 1998, making it the 4th most-watched finale in TV history. The legacy Warren Littlefield appeared on The Town podcast in 2023 and revealed something that explains the show's early spirit. Jerry and Larry were convinced that they would never air, and so they decided that they would make the show for their friends. Preston Beckman, NBC's former head of ratings research, acknowledged years later what the testing had really meant. The show was different. Nobody had seen anything like it. It wasn't unusual for poor testing shows to get on the air, but it was very rare that they became big hits. Those test viewers in 1989 weren't wrong about what they saw. They just couldn't predict how their own tastes would shift over the next few years. The show needed nearly 4 years to find its audience, the kind of patience modern streaming services almost never extend to their programming. The money tells the real story of Vindication. Syndication revenue hit $3.1 billion by 2015, Netflix paid over $500 million for streaming rights in 2021, and total worldwide revenue has exceeded $4 billion, second only to Friends among sitcoms. Jerry Seinfeld honored Rick Ludwin's memory in his 2024 Netflix film Unfrosted by naming a character after the executive who believed when nobody else did. When Ludwin died in 2019, Seinfeld released a statement that got to the heart of it. Rick Ludwin was the one person at NBC in 1989 that thought The Seinfeld Chronicles would be a funny TV series. John Mulaney's words at Ludwin's death captured what made the difference. He backed people he believed in and made his opinion known in a professional and thoughtful way, but he would not back down. That refusal to back down came from Ludwin, from Larry David, from Rob Reiner, and from Jerry Seinfeld himself, turning television's most notorious near miss into one of its defining achievements. A pilot stamped weak by network research became a cultural phenomenon worth $4 billion, all because one executive who'd never worked on a sitcom was willing to cancel a Bob Hope special and order just 4 episodes. The smallest sitcom order in television history became one of the biggest success stories ever told. Catch you on the next one.